Hello there, I'm Crystal Gilbert, and today I am joined by Miss Sophie, who is going to teach us all about getting started with backyard chickens. I am super, super excited. So welcome, Sophie. And
Hey, thank you.
yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. So if you can just share a little bit about yourself and your homestead with us.
I'm Sophie, and I live on a 4-acre farm with my husband and our 3 kids. And we started our farm in terms of it's a hobby farm, is what I call it, because we don't make a ton of money from it. We don't use it for the purpose of making money. We use it for the purpose of having a hobby. But we do sell our eggs, which is kind of like a bonus that we might get to talk about. So we started with chickens because chickens are kind of like your introductory farm animal. They are so easy to care for. They're generally like, if you stick to hens as far as having little kids around, they're really nice to little kids. And so, they're smaller than kids, so they're less intimidating. So yeah, that's kind of what we started, but then we eventually progressed to goats, and we now have a livestock guardian dog. And someday, we have a bigger area we want to fence off, and I would love to get a milking cow someday. Someday. And then I do have some horses that are at my parents' house currently because we don't have the room fenced off for them yet. So yeah, that's just a little bit about our little farm and kind of how we started. I did grow up on a farm, so that gave me kind of the confidence to say, like, I can do this.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
You got a nice little start going on there. And I think with everything going on in the world right now, so many parents and families are wanting to get started to be a bit more self-sufficient. They're realizing how unstable the food system is and just the cost of things, inflation, and that we're kind of going back to the depression era where we need to start looking at how to take care of our family ourselves and not be so dependent on others. So I definitely appreciate you sharing your expertise and your trials and errors with us to make it a little bit easier for people like me who have not had all that upbringing. My dad and stepmom grew all sorts of things in their garden, raised all sorts of animals, but I wasn't brought up living with them. So this is perfect for me, and so many people that I know are in that same position with me. It's just overwhelming. So why don't you share with us what made you get started with raising chickens?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, if you hear like little clicking nails, that's my dogs. I need to trim their nails so bad. It's like muting myself because it's so loud. But so yeah, what made me want to get started with chickens is honestly, I grew up and I just love them. They're very docile. They're very sweet. They're fun to watch. Like when you get to know your chickens and like they have like little personalities and even kind of like clicks, which is really funny. That happens probably more so when there's roosters around, but I knew that I wanted farm animals, and I knew that if we were to start this on our own, that chickens were the way to go to start off. They're inexpensive to buy in the first place. I won't say they're inexpensive to keep, but they are one of the least expensive animals to keep on a farm. They definitely cost more money than we make. So it's not something that, again, it's kind of like having a pet dog, right? Like you're not going to, unless you're literally doing it as a business venture, it is money going in for the enjoyment of having them. So yeah, I mean, I think my husband, I've been just dragging him along this whole journey. very easygoing with like the things that I want to do. And part of it was I just wanted to have them. I know that sounds kind of silly. Like I eat more eggs now than I did. We've had them now for 4 years. And I mostly like gave the eggs away for a while and I just enjoyed them. But now the eggs have definitely become a more fun part of it. And I'm looking at getting more chickens to get even more eggs, because I have neighbors and friends who love them. And I'm like, I think I need more eggs coming in each day. We're almost running out all the time. So yeah, that's how it started, was honestly just because I wanted to. So I just want to encourage people that, like, if it's something that you think you can, reasonably afford to do, and especially if you're going to raise them for meat or you're going to raise them for eggs and it's going to put food on your table, like, you don't really need a reason outside of that if you just want to enjoy them. Or, yeah, bonus, I get eggs. So yeah, that's kind of where we started with them.
Awesome. So, given your years of experience with it, what would you say are the pros and cons that you found with raising chickens?
Oh, it's mostly pros. That's a good question. It's mostly pros because it's something that, as a mom, it's teaching my kids about chores, like responsibility. It's teaching them that, we have to go out each morning and let them out and make sure they've got food and clean water, and put them up at night and lock them up so they're safe. They learn not to be afraid of animals. And not that that's like, I think you know what I mean there, right? Like, I just don't want them chronically afraid of something that's not harmful. And it's boosting their immune systems by being out there and living like with the animals. And I know that it's gross, but like the other day I wiped chicken poop off my kid's hand. Like, he was like, caca, caca. And it's really good for my kids in more than one way. I mean, the eggs are really healthy too. But yeah, other pros would be that they keep down pests. They actually genuinely will eat bugs, and you will probably notice significantly less pests in around your house. They do also eat down your grass. So I guess we're getting more into cons. It's really good for chickens to have fresh grass, and like, we're noticing that the area that we have them in is quite large, but they eat it down. And so we're going to have to expand their area a little bit. So you kind of have to maybe do some research into how many chickens and how much room will they need. So we have like 25 or 26 chickens. And I mean, I don't know how to describe the pen. It might be 50 feet by 20 feet. It's kind of a long rectangle, and it's bone dry. They ate all the grass. So we'll have to expand that. But they do stink. They're not super smelly animals. Like, you think of like pigs, right? And you're like, you drive past that and you just drove past the pig farm. It's not like that. But like, if you're not keeping it cleaned out, or also expand where there isn't grass and other things to kind of absorb that poop that's everywhere, then it's basically just like a poop pile. Whereas when you have a nice open areas, it kind of gets more spread out, right? So it's all in how you manage them too. I like to clean out their chicken coop once a quarter.
Uh-oh, you froze on us.
Oh no.
Okay,
Okay.
we're back.
Am I back?
You're back.
All right.
All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. My internet connection's unstable. So
I'm
keep going.
on my data. So, okay. I don't know where I stopped. Okay. Sorry, guys. I don't know if my internet's just kind of cutting out, but we're back, and it can be a little sneaky, but it also depends. It's really how you manage your chickens and your flock too. So like if you give them more space, it's not gonna, like, it will probably hardly stink at all if they have a lot of room to roam. If they're kept in a smaller pen, you're gonna have to clean it out really frequently, and you're gonna have more of a stink problem. But yeah, and I mean, the other con might be that although I kind of see it as a pro, you will lose chickens. They don't live very long in the first place, but it also just, when you get a batch of baby chicks, you never really know how many of them are going to be super healthy. I mean, of course, where you buy from can make a difference, but you're probably going to lose some as they grow up. You tend to see, like, sometimes there's deformities. That's really not a super common thing. Like scissor beak is one of them. And sometimes they can live totally healthy like that. But I had one hen that just, I think she was more prone to an injury. She got an injury and we tried to nurse her back to health, but we couldn't. And so the reason why I see it as a pro is because my kids are learning that, like, the circle of life, that this is part of life, and we talk about it. It opens up that discussion in a way that's not so big and massive. Like losing a pet chicken is not as big as like losing your pet dog or losing somebody that you love, right? And it just opens up that discussion however you want to handle it. Predators can be a problem, but that's part of why we have a livestock guardian dog. But we really didn't. I mean, if you keep your chickens penned up well, we didn't have that problem before the dog. So yeah, there's really not a lot of cons. I mean, and because they're just protective of their hens, and they can obviously crow. And so if that annoys you, or if you have neighbors, I mostly see pros in owning chickens. It's a good question.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. There's a lot of good points in there too, especially like you mentioned, introducing your kids to the life and death factor in a way that's, gentle to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you would be surprised at like how hard a kid would take, the death of a chicken but that they named. But again, it's still, even then, it's still lesser, and it's a good introduction, because it's going to happen in our lives. We are going to lose animals and people that we love in our lives. And so I think of it as a good introduction to understanding those emotions and going through it and understanding, again, however you want to explain it. So yeah, yes,
Definitely.
I do see it that way.
All right. So how have you seen your kids grow by being around the chickens? Like you mentioned the chores. What are there any
Yeah.
other ways that they've grown?
Yeah, I mean, they haven't really known anything different. So I don't know that I could say, like, the stark difference from not having them versus having them. We moved here when my oldest was just a year and a half. And so, but I will say that knowing my kids, again, just kind of this willingness to, even like like when you're not afraid of catching a chicken, for example, because they're a little bit, they can like kind of like fly a little bit, and it can be scary, especially I know some people are actually terrified of birds. And this really would like take that out of the equation, like if you grew up around chickens. But they also are just really interested in exploring like bugs, and they're not so afraid of bugs, and that makes them not so afraid of, other experiences. It's just kind of, when you introduce your kids to new experiences, no matter what it is, they're going to be more open to other new experiences. So they love to show their chickens off. They like when people come over, they want to catch a chicken, like, look, I caught a chicken. And they definitely love the responsibility, at least at the age that my kids are, right? They're still pretty young. And so feeling responsible for doing a certain part of the chore, like when they're helping you clean out the coop, that's mostly the oldest. Or they're collecting eggs, right? Like that's when all parents like want to see their, yeah, there's, I would just say the responsibility and the willingness to be open to new experiences.
That's so, so good and so important. And I think too, with the culture that we're in these days, it's really so padded and safeguarded that kids don't really get that experience to really discover and explore and learn and grow as they should do. So that's just,
Mm-hmm.
that's so cool. All right. So, what are some things you wish you would have known if you
Yeah.
could go back?
And I mean, you don't have to live on a 4 acre, oh, sorry.
Oh,
Before, like when I first started owning, sorry, I think there's a delay.
okay. It's okay. Keep going.
Trying to figure out where I'm at. So things I wish I would have known mostly are around being able to protect my chickens better. They used to free range and considered, but we live right up next to corn and soybeans, and I was just losing chickens. They just wouldn't, and during the daytime, that's pretty rare. They roost at night, and then at night is when the predators are out, and that's why they're safe in their coop. But I was losing them during the day, and to what they were doing, their behaviors, and they were walking into the fields to look for bugs. Okay, so I was losing chickens during the daytime, and I started to just basically pay attention to what they were doing. And I noticed they were going into the fields and they were packing around for bugs and, just kind of exploring because we live, I mean, we're surrounded by fields, crops. And what I think was happening is they were actually going so far that when you get far enough into a field, you turn around and you don't know which way is back. I mean, especially if you're a chicken. So I think I was losing a lot that way. And that's when we decided to start penning them. And I grew up with free range chickens, and you will lose more. You just will. When you free range, there's predators from the sky, there's predators, in the fields. It's just a higher risk. But the chickens do love it, and it is really cute to see them walking around. So I do wish that I wouldn't have lost so many that way. There's a couple other things, like they're so easy to care for, you guys. They are so easy. Like, you don't have to worry about vet visits. And I mean, I hate to say it, but the truth is losing a chicken is not something that you're typically super, like, you're going to pay that much to go see a vet for. You know what I mean? It's but they're very pest resistant. Like, they can get pests, don't get me wrong, and you can just like search how to work with that and how to solve that problem. But for the most part, because they clean themselves, and I don't know, they're just a simple animal. I just haven't had a ton of problems. But you just have to keep them safe at night, warm enough in the winter. People have varying opinions on what that, so that's, I guess what I wish I would have known is I wish I wouldn't have lost so many that early on, because I didn't realize what they were doing and where they were going. And I still don't know that that's the answer, but so many because they're penned up.
All right. That's really good to know. I've heard so much about like the foxes getting in and eating the chickens. We don't really have any here in Florida, but that's really good to know. Thank you. All right. So
Yeah.
now, what would you tell people? Like, how do you actually get started? Like, say for me, we don't have our chickens yet, and we are allowed a maximum of 4 where we're at. So, is that enough for a family of 4? And what would you tell someone when they're looking for chickens, and what's the basics of getting started?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a chicken expert, right? Like I'm just somebody who owns chickens. So if you're wanting to get really like a specific breed or a specific amount of eggs that they lay, because like the hens that I have, I bought them because their eggs are like these pretty colors and people love pretty colored eggs, but they're not like a production egg layer. So it means that their production is lower than if I were to have the same amount of a different breed
Mm.
that would lay a lot more. So you kind of have to do your own research in terms of what you're looking for. I would definitely say don't waste your time on roosters. I mean, it's not, some people really love to have roosters, but especially if you're in a situation where you don't want to have any baby chicks running around, hens will still lay eggs. That's like a big misconception. A lot of people don't know that like your hens will still lay eggs even if there's not a rooster around. It's just that when there's a rooster around, they'll be fertilized eggs, which are totally safe to eat. They will not hurt you. You won't even notice that they're fertilized, but they will be. Um, and they tend to be more of a nuisance, especially if you have kids. They will kind of, they can beat up your hens because they are instinctually driven to mate. And the way they mate, if you have kids around, that was another reason why we got rid of our roosters, is because our kids are like watching it and we didn't really want to explain it. That's maybe for when they're a little bit older, or totally up to you, right? Like if you are ready to explain that right off the bat, go for it. But we just felt bad for our hens a little bit, like they just were getting attacked. We had too many roosters too. So I would say just don't even mess with roosters. Just get yourself. So the way that you know that is when you go, like you can go to a farm store and find chicks, and they're going to be, for the most part, perfectly healthy chickens. They will have them separated by breed, and they'll have, what's called pullets, which is, well, actually, I don't know if they call them, and I'm like, do they call them pullets? Pullet is a young hen, but they will have like, these are females for sure. Like you're guaranteed that these are going to be hens. And then they'll have what's called a straight run. And a straight run means, I don't know what it is, so take it your own risk. And you could buy 4 chickens and you could end up with 4 roosters. And I think in my experience, it's mostly roosters in those straight runs. So steer clear of the straight run, find the one that says they're pullets, look at the breed, look at what you're looking for. It's totally okay to buy a chicken that's pretty, like go for it. They're pretty and they're fun. The size will matter. So there's, bantam chickens are like a smaller breed. And then there's, I would say like average size. And then there's giant chickens. So pay attention and do your research before you buy a breed. But all you'll need to get started, if you're getting baby chicks, which are you thinking you're going to start with chicks, or are you thinking you're going to go find full grown hens?
Probably full grown.
Okay, so that makes it easier.
Okay.
So if you go with full grown, it's easier because you don't have to go through that. There's a lot more nurturing, obviously, when they're young. You need a heat lamp and you need, smaller feeders and waters they aren't going to drown themselves in. So I would say if you're starting with full grown, all you need is a place that they're going to be safe to stay at night. Depending on where you live, like you probably won't need it, but like you might need a heat lamp for the winter, depending on where you live. Some people, again, I think it depends on where you live, but some people disagree with that and think they're going to be just fine in the winter. We give ours a heat lamp. And then like a food and water container, and you can just buy food from, again, the farm store. You don't have to do anything fancy if you don't want to. We feed, I missed this pro. Okay, you guys, this is a major pro of having chickens. They are a natural like compost. It is so nice to it's like we don't waste a single scrap. If you have pigs, they're similar, but chickens are like the same way. You can feed them meat. It's not going to hurt them. In fact, chickens naturally eat like mice and stuff. And so even if you have leftover meat, which you don't compost meat, for anybody that doesn't know. You can feed it to your chickens as long as it's in small. You have to be careful it's small enough, cut up small enough. I mean, that old spring lettuce that you buy that goes bad in the fridge, or those strawberries that you never get around to, like, you're never wasting anything, and you're giving them nutrients and variety in their diet, and that's going to make their yolks nice and dark and rich and healthy for you then to eat that. Like, it's a really good cycle that happens that way. So yeah, it's pretty much straightforward. That's why I love them. It's like food, water, shelter, and they're good. What kind of setup do you think you want to have? Do you think are they going to be penned in, or are they going to be able to free range? What are you thinking?
Well, we're like a country subdivision. So we're right close to a main road too. So they
Yeah.
have to be pinned in.
Yeah.
But we do live on 1.5 acres. So we do have a little bit of leniency there. So a big pin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can totally create a pen that is easy enough to move. So like if you have an area that it's not like you just keep moving it all over your yard, but you might have, like, say you have a grid where you have your pen here, but you might like move it here for a few weeks, move it here for a few weeks, move it here, and you're just kind of going, you know what I mean, and have like a general area where they can get fresh grass if they're eating it down, or you can just make your pen a little bit bigger. Our fence is probably about up to here on me. It's like 4 feet, and they can fly over something like that. So just in case anybody's wondering, like, yes, your chickens can, but they don't typically care to do it if they've got enough stimulation in their pen. So that will kind of change things too. The only times that I can really think of a chicken flying over was actually when my dog was on the other side and like trying to chase them and scare them, and they fly when they're scared. And it's not even then it's not like they're going to run off. Like, they typically want to stay close up to home base. If they get on the other side of the fence, they'll typically just kind of walk around the outside of it until you come back and catch them and put them back in. You said, as long as you know your local ordinances about what's allowed, then you won't, have to deal with getting yourself in trouble with angry neighbors or anything like that. Although I will say it's probably a good idea if you have neighbors to just let them know, like, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. Ultimately, if it's legal, and then be aware of if your neighbors have dogs that roam free, because dogs will absolutely kill chickens. 100%. I mean, my dog out there, we had some that were getting into his side before we kind of fixed up the fence better, and he was killing them because it's just instinct. And so be aware for your own, safety of your own chickens, of any close by predators that, while they're nice to you, would absolutely kill a chicken.
Those are very good tips. I definitely learned a lot already that, just isn't found Googling it.
Yeah. There's so much more you can learn. Like, I still feel like a novice, honestly, because I follow people like on Instagram. I have a magazine somewhere that I just bought that's a chicken magazine, and like I'm flipping through it and I'm learning stuff about how to care for chickens. We've started feeding the shells of the eggs back to the chickens. I just cook them in the oven a little bit because it dries them out, and crumble them up and feed it back, and it's good calcium and nutrients for your chickens to have to continue to harden their shells as they lay eggs. But like, it's talking about you can put like herbs in their nesting boxes, and that helps to kind of keep pests away. Or like using essential oil, apple cider vinegar to their water. Like, there's things that you can do that I haven't, so if it's any testimony, like I haven't been doing that and we've had really good success and healthy chickens, but just adding that, I think it would increase it. So yeah, just be open to learning. That is definitely, I mean, with us owning goats, that is a similar path for me. They're very easy animals, but I can see things that I could be doing better. And I'm trying to learn how to better care for them all the time.
Right. So, do you raise
Yeah.
any of your chickens for meat, or are they just strictly for egg production?
Egg production. However, I do think that we will eventually get into raising chickens for meat. And that has to do with, again, this, I'm also, I would say, new to this movement of wanting to be more self-sustainable. I have had, like my mom has raised chickens for me, and we have taken, you know, birds and cuts of meat from her, but we haven't done it ourselves. And from what I remember, it's like a very short, when you have chickens for meat, it's a very short window. I think those birds were, it was like 8 weeks that she had them, because they can actually get like too heavy. Yeah. So, which is kind of nice, because then it's not, you know, it's not like you're raising them for a full year and putting all that money into them, but it is a very quick thing. So yeah, that would be something new for me. And I do hope to do that, because I would love to have a freezer full of meat that we know how the animals were cared for, and we know what, you know, they were fed. And yeah, I think that that's great for anybody that wants to pursue that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know I could talk about this all day, and you probably could too, but I think that's good for right now for getting started. Um, so thank you so very much for this interview and your time, and just sharing with us what your expertise is so far up to this point. Um, is there anything else you wanted to share?
Just encourage people to question what they think they can do.
Mm,
Always question, like, oh, I don't know, I've never done that. Like, just all it takes is what Crystal is doing here, is just finding somebody, or going online if you don't know anybody, and searching and realizing that, like, I want more people to feel empowered to do things just like this. Like, I'm trying to tell you, it's not that, I know there's a lot of like little bits of information, but ultimately it comes down to chickens need shelter, food, and water. Like, it is so simple, and they're going to give so much back to you. And so, not to be intimidated by like worrying about every little detail. Like, get your hands dirty. That's what I would say, is just get your hands dirty, give it a shot. And you're going to make mistakes, and just expect that and be okay with it, and learn from them, and be a better, you know, animal caretaker from that point on. I love to follow people on Instagram. I think that that's a great, because people are very open, and in their stories, they will share, like, I follow somebody who does butcher her chickens, and I was learning so much just from completely free, just from following her. So that's her handle is She Found Grace, for anybody that cares. And there's more than just that. There's tons of other people that do as well. But yeah, be brave. Just try it. That's what I would say. Try it and learn from your mistakes.
I love that. I see a
Well,
t-shirt.
thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I know we're on a little lag here, so now, where can anyone follow you, like your Instagram, or do you have a YouTube or anything that people can follow your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So I have an Instagram, is probably the best place right now. And my handle is just at Hey Sophie J. SOPH. Sometimes people get Sophie with an F, but that is where I share probably and it's it's not all just farming stuff. But I do have a YouTube, and I'll maybe give you the link later, because I actually, even right now, I'm like, I think it's still at Crunchy Country Mama, and that was my old Instagram handle. I don't really talk about farm stuff on there. So I would say definitely the best place to get the most farm stuff would be my Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry my internet was kind of
It's okay.
choppy there.
We got a lot of good stuff anyway. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop
Awesome.
everyone. So thank you for joining us for getting started with backyard chickens. And I hope that encourages and inspires you to just be brave. All right.
Yeah. Thanks.